All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur and Kasparian with you guys. Also, welcome to a free America. Donald Trump is gone. There's a vaccine for coronavirus. By the spring, we should be completely free. How awesome does that sound? So we're gonna get to all those stories for you guys in a second. I just wanted to show you two things before we get started that everybody's excited about. I've got all the different colors of this "You're Fired" t-shirt. I've worn them in public and people have like lost it. Like, you gotta get me these shirts. I'm like, everywhere I go, I'm like, shop2yt.com, shop2yt.com, because they're asking. So I don't know. There you go. You're fired. Uncle Sam chastising Donald Trump. Donald Trump still hasn't gotten the message. Anna's gonna give you that story in a second. And then guys, the fundraising through the end of the year is still super important. So let's please keep that going. tyt.com/go. Every dollar there is a dollar that helps keep the Young Turks strong, keeps all of us here in a position to get the progressive message out and a fight for change for you guys. And boy, is that necessary at a time, as we'll also talk about later in the show, where folks are attacking progressives for losing Congress. A story that makes my blood boil. And we will fight back on your behalf as you fight on our behalf by going to tyt.com/go. Let's see the thermometer real quick, see where we are right now. Try to get to 200,000 every month this year. 56,133. Can I see 57,000 by the next break? That would be amazing. tyt.com/go. Thank you guys. All right, Anna, let's fire it up.
All right, well, Donald Trump continues to refuse to concede that he lost his re-election bid, and Axios is also reporting that he plans on holding rallies to push this narrative that there's been widespread voter fraud, a narrative that they have failed to provide any evidence of. These are completely unfounded accusations, and even Fox News, which served as almost like state-sponsored media defending Donald Trump throughout his first term, has decided that they are not gonna go along with this particular narrative because it turns out that, upholding the democratic process is a little more important than supporting a wannabe dictator like Donald Trump. In fact, just today, his White House press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, went on Fox News to try to push this false narrative, and here's how it went down.
We want every legal vote to be counted, and we want every illegal vote to be.
I just think we have to be very clear. She's charging, the other side is welcoming fraud and welcoming illegal voting. Unless she has more details to back that up, I can't in good countenance continue showing you this. I want to make sure that maybe they do have something to back that up, but that's an explosive charge to make, that the other side is effectively rigging and cheating.
So Fox News isn't having it. Every major news organization isn't having it. The only people who keep pushing this idea that the election was stolen or that there was widespread fraud that put Donald Trump at a disadvantage is Donald Trump himself and some of his lackeys, who are hoping that remaining loyal to Donald Trump will continue to help them in their political careers. But as I'll explain later, Cenk, there are some lower level employees within the White House who are like, oh yeah, there was widespread fraud, sure. Anyway, here's my resume. I'm looking for a job. So it's incredible. But I'll give you more details on the rallies in just a minute. I wanted to get your thoughts, Cenk.
Yeah, so look, when Fox News has to correct your insane right-wing spin, there's some chance you might have gone too far. But I like the way that Cavuto put it, and I can't believe the number of times I've complimented Cavuto in the Trump years. He was probably near the very top of the list of people I loathed in any other year. So to give you a sense of how deeply insane they've gone, where even the most strident right-wingers go, no, this is really crazy talk. So in this case, the thing that he pointed out that's really helpful, and I feel like even the rest of cable news hasn't done a good enough job with this, saying that the other side cheated and cheated large enough to make a difference in states where you lost by 20,000 votes, 45,000 votes. is a super serious charge. If that was true, and you had evidence of Joe Biden or anyone cheating to the tune of 45,000 votes, that would be one of the biggest scandals in American history. And so if you're gonna make such a gigantic charge, you have to have excellent evidence. And they have zero evidence. They don't just have bad evidence, they have zero evidence. And so we've gotten used to Donald Trump and literally everyone surrounding him being pathological liars, cheats, con men, etc. They were like, oh yeah, he's accusing the other side of the biggest crime in political crime in American history. And we're just gonna move on, right? And we'll try to ignore him or something, even though he's president of the United States. No, if we had a rational discussion, we'd be talking about, how discredited and disgraceful not just Trump is, but every single Republican who's still going down this path, like Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, you name it. And we'd be talking about, look, have they lost their minds? Should there be proceedings to get them out of office if they're not mentally capable of doing the job? These are lunatic conspiracy theories.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. One of the other individuals who's enabling Trump with this ridiculous narrative is Doug Collins, who's an outgoing congressman. And I wanted to just quickly bring something up before I forget, though. So I remember being critical of Hillary Clinton on the night of the 2016 election because tradition usually entails the individual who lost the election, coming out and conceding that they lost, thanking all the hard workers who put in the time and the effort in the campaigning. And Hillary Clinton, I guess, was just too distraught to give that speech on the night of the election. She did it the next day. And the Republicans, including Trump, just would not stop talking about it. They were clowning her, of course, but they were also pretending like they were deeply offended by the fact that they didn't believe Hillary Clinton was accepting the results of the election. Everything that the GOP accuses others of doing is exactly what they see themselves doing, and worse, much worse. It's always projection. And so I think that, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Anna, before you go on, I just want to jump in on that real quick. So Hillary Clinton took some set of hours, not days, not weeks, to come to the conclusion that even though she had won the popular vote by millions of votes, she had in fact lost the Electoral College. So in that tiny window of time, that's where the MAGA guys are like, oh my God, now this has gone on for Donald Trump for an extended period of time, not remotely true. And now let's remember, Donald Trump has now lost the popular vote, not once, but twice. And he's also the only president who's ever lost the popular vote twice and been impeached. So he's a loser on top of a loser. And now he's the biggest sore loser there is as he continues his conspiratorial talk and now potentially rallies about how he secretly won, if you count the secret legal votes. And if Hillary Clinton had done even 1% of that, both the Trump people and the media would have ripped her to shreds. But here we are with the Trump camp still dug in there. As Chris Wallace said, they're like the Japanese soldiers that were in the cave for 30 years after World War II and never came out. They're still in their caves and refusing to concede what the entire planet recognizes at this point.
I actually want to read you Trump's tweet from 2016. He tweeted this on December 23rd, 2016. Vladimir Putin said today about Hillary and Dems, quote, "In my opinion, it is humiliating. One must be able to lose with dignity." And then he commented, "So true." There's a tweet for everything. It's amazing. It's amazing. So Cenk, he's planning on going around doing these rallies where he's going to read names of people who have died, but allegedly cast ballots for his opponent, right? So it's this ridiculous idea that there are all these fraudulent ballots that have been cast on behalf of people who are dead. As Axios reports, obits for those who cast ballots are part of the specific pieces of evidence aimed at bolstering the Trump team's so far unsupported claims of widespread voter fraud and corruption that they say led to Joe Biden's victory. And I do want to put some of these Republican enablers on blast because clearly our democratic process is not important to them. Their political careers are more important to them. Licking Trump's boots is more important to them. In Georgia, for instance, Doug Collins, the outgoing congressman who lost to Senator Kelly Loeffler in a special election to fill former Senator Johnny Isaacson seat, will be leading the campaign's recount efforts. The team has also redeployed 92 staffers from Florida to Georgia, doubling its group on the ground. And Georgia isn't the only state that will have this like recount effort. You also have recount efforts in Arizona and Pennsylvania. Also, some of the rhetoric coming from these Republicans, who, by the way, spoke to Axios on condition of anonymity, is just absolutely disgusting. They're using like war rhetoric in what they're saying. For instance, one Trump advisor said this: "We want to make sure we have an adequate supply of manpower on the ground for man-to-man combat." What? What does that even mean?
Yeah,
it's pathetic. And then one more thing before you jump in, Cenk. Lindsey Graham doing what you would expect Lindsey Graham to do. Let's go to his video.
So are you committing right here, right now, that you will stop any progressive plans that come to you? You will vote no to 4.3 trillion in tax increases. You will vote no to the Green New Deal. Is that what you're committing to right here?
You can take it to the bank. I ran on it. I won overwhelmingly, being a impediment, a block to the most radical domestic agenda in the history of the country. We will kill it dead in the Senate if you give us the majority. We will work with Biden if he wins, but Trump has not lost. Do not concede, Mr. President. Fight hard.
Okay.
Do not concede, Mr. President. Fight hard. It's disgusting.
Okay, so let me break down why they're doing it, and then, but first, a fun note about that interview. Why is Maria Bartiromo always yelling? You have a mic. Like, so sometimes I get worked up on the show and I'll yell, but there's a reason. Like, I'm really mad at corporate Democrats or Trump or something. She doesn't appear to be mad. She's like, "Are you going to work down?" Okay, all right, the mic's right here. They're picking up your voice. And then I love the way she frames questions as if they're controversial, like, "Are you going to be voting down the Green New Deal?" Yeah, of course he is. He's a Republican from South Carolina. He's got no interest in the Green New Deal. But it makes it sound like, oh, he's being brave. How very, very bold. But now the main thing. Lindsey Graham and especially Ted Cruz are backing Trump because they want to keep the conservative base happy. And they realize, look, Lindsey Graham just won an election by over 10 points when his opponent had raised approximately $1 Brazilian. Jamie Harrison way outraised Lindsey Graham and still lost. And so what the takeaway that Lindsey Graham got out of that is, as long as I can get my conservative base to show up in South Carolina, it doesn't matter how much my Democratic opponent raises or anything else. So I just got to keep them happy. And how do I keep them happy? I keep telling them lies about how Trump actually won. I keep telling them I'm going to keep punching liberals in the face politically, right? And so that's what he's doing here. And I guess from his point of view, that might even be smart political strategy if you're a Republican in South Carolina. And Ted Cruz wants to run in 2024. Sad day for him. New report out, Trump thinking about running again in 2024 while he pretends he didn't lose in 2020. I love that irony, okay? But Ted Cruz, the cuck, has to go in there and go, yes, I mean, if Trump runs again, I will, of course, let him call my wife ugly again, and I will again beclown myself by phone banking for him. But for the moment being, Trump voters, I love you. I'm totally on the same planet as you. He didn't lose at all. But vote for me in 2024, even though Trump didn't lose. So that's what they're up to. But Anna, the Doug Collins of the world that you mentioned, that makes sense. He lost in the primary. He's got nothing better to do anyway. He's a rabid right winger anyway. He's trying to angle for a job in that sphere, right? But what's amazing is today, Kelly Loeffler, who actually advanced to the runoff in Georgia and is the current sitting senator in Georgia, and David Perdue, the other sitting senator, also going to a runoff, came out and asked for the Secretary of State's resignation in the state of Georgia. So now why is that amazing? Because the Secretary of State in Georgia is Republican, very, very Republican. And so what's awesome is since he's a right winger, he didn't do what Democrats do, which is like, oh, I'm so sorry, okay, I'll resign, or I'll think about resigning. No, he's a Republican, so he's like, no. I can't curse, but and he didn't curse, but that was the equivalent of buzz off, right? He's like, no, we ran the most transparent election, and by the way, all the experts agree about Georgia. And he's like, I will not be doing any such thing, and I don't care what you guys are trying to do. So now that's the Republicans going to war against each other. And the reason for that is they're throwing the guy under the bus for no reason to aid and abet their lies to try to get their conservative base that believes in nothing but lies to show up and vote for them.
I mean, it's just so pathetic. I would be terrified if I were a Republican lawmaker or a Republican official of some sort, because everyone's vulnerable to these insane conspiracy theories. Anyone can be thrown under the bus, and it's absolutely pathetic. But I do want to move on to a lighter aspect of this story because it exists. If you were online at all over the weekend, there was just Trump's loss is like the gift that keeps on giving. This next story is an example of that.
Hello, I saw a dead person voting for Joe Biden in Philadelphia. His eyes were glassy, he smelled like a corpse, and he walked up to the check-in table and said, I have awoken from my eternal slumber to feast on the brains of the living and also vote for Joe Biden.
So Donald Trump has refused to concede. He has lost his re-election bid, but he doesn't want to admit it. And as a result, his campaign has set up a so-called fraud hotline to collect alleged reports of election fraud. Of course, they've provided no evidence of election fraud. It is an unfounded nonsense accusation that the Trump campaign is using to cover up for the fact that they failed and that they're losers. And so this fraud hotline has now been spammed with people clowning them, prank calls, a lot of fun stuff going on, which we'll give you examples of in just a minute. And as Jonathan Swan from Axios tweeted over the weekend, Trump campaign aides manning the voter fraud hotline described mostly fielding prank calls from lefty teenagers and dealing with some disturbing unsolicited adult images. So we gotta give you some examples. Like we just gave you an example in that cold open, but this next video is fantastic. But before we go to it, I gotta give you this context. Remember that Donald Trump told his supporters to vote twice, to vote by mail and then show up to the polls and vote in person on the day of the election. That's important context for what you're about to hear in this prank call.
You said you had already voted for the national election in Detroit?
Yes.
And you went to the polling location in Kalamazoo for what purpose?
To vote.
I thought you said you had already voted in Detroit.
I did.
So you were going to vote twice?
Yes.
I don't think you're allowed to vote twice.
Why wouldn't I? If the Democrats can do it, why can't I?
Because it's not allowed. It's illegal. That's what we're trying to find what the Democrats are doing to stop them from doing that.
I'm just worried because I saw what happened in Detroit, and so I'm trying my best to help. And I know that, I know some of my family members had been doing it to help Trump out because we care so much, and so I just didn't know. I didn't know what else we could do.
Left flank vets is in that video. That's what that video is. But I just absolutely love it. By the way, we rated them on Twitch the other day because they do great content. So show them some love, Cenk.
Okay, by the way, for the boomers like me, rating on Twitch is a good thing, not a bad thing.
Very good thing.
That means you send your audience over to them. Okay, I love these pranks. So I showed an example of it on Twitter, and people are like, "Oh, so you're encouraging this kind of stuff?" Well, we're trying to track down legitimate fraud. I see how you guys are trying to stop us from tracking down very, very legitimate fraud. I mean, we haven't tracked down a single piece of evidence yet, but there's a lot of pics that we're looking through. I bet there is. My favorite, in that video, my favorite was that guy thoroughly finishing the beer he was working on. He didn't. I know. He didn't want a drop left in that beer. Good for you, brother. So I like the Bernie placard in the back. There's a lot right with that video. Anyway, so okay, now my favorite thing overall in this story is Eric Trump. Eric Trump, because he's the slowest of the Trumps. Oh, and that is damning. Put out a tweet saying, "Oh yeah, you know what? This is outrageous. Encouraged by the DNC. These prank calls, dude."
Let me read the tweet. Let me read the tweet because we have it.
Comment.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So he tweeted this. The DNC is spamming our voter fraud hotline to bog down the thousands of complaints we are receiving. Wonder what they have to hide. Wonder what you have to hide. If you're really receiving thousands of calls alleging voter fraud, why don't you share them with us?
Okay.
Right? Like, where are they? Outline the specific allegations. But they haven't been able to because it doesn't exist.
Okay, two things about Eric Trump. So there was a story that came out over the weekend, like different people thinking about how they're going to talk to Trump and get him out of the bunker and tell him, no, really, you lost. And everybody gets it, but they all have different political strategies. Don Jr.'s thinking of running for something, and so he's angling like, oh no, Dad, I'm with you, even though he knows this. The only one in the White House who doesn't get it is Eric. Because he's Beavis. So he's like, yeah, can you believe the abuse and fraud that they did? And everybody's like, oh, Eric thinks it's real. Oh, Jesus. Okay, it's awesome. Anyway, so then he comes out and does this tweet. Hey, Eric, the DNC does not need to tell people on TikTok or anywhere else to do prank calls for you. And the DNC, as much as I loathe them at different times for being corporate consultant-filled, organization, they are professionals. They're not gonna go around being like, hey guys, you wanna prank Trump people? No, the reason you think they might do that is because that's what you would do. Your family is so stupid. They'd be like, okay, how should we spend the couple of days after the election? Prank calling the Democrats, right? Okay, and your tweet, dude, got more prank calls than anything that the DNC or anyone else has ever done. When you go, hey guys, can you stop prank calling us? All you're gonna get is more prank calls, you idiot. So TikTok, incoming because of the tweet alone.
Oh, it's so amazing. Just a few more examples. One woman said that she met the devil at her Georgia polling place, and he called, and he challenged her to a fiddle contest. When she lost, Mr. Biden would win. Sports writer Jeff Pearlman simply recounted the elaborate plot of the sitcom Different Strokes. Alex Hirsch, creator of the Disney Channel TV show Gravity Falls, called in to report that he saw a man matching the description of McDonald's Hamburglar walk into a polling place wearing a black hat, black mask, a striped shirt, and a red tie. And I believe there were hamburgers in his bag. And he was saying, "Robble, robble," as he was exiting the building, Hirsch added, like a burglar, I think he's probably Antifa.
Well,
it just keeps getting better and better.
But Anna, it really isn't that much different than Steven Crowder's theory or any of the Sharpie Gate, etc. So Crowder's a right-wing nut job on YouTube, and he's like, there was a wagon. We saw a wagon. The only thing he left out was that it was filled with burgers, right? If he'd said that part, Donald Trump probably would have been even more interested. So there's a fine line between the pranks and what Republicans are actually saying.
Yeah. All right. Well, when we come back from the break, we're going to switch over to the infighting between moderate Democrats and progressives. John Kasich, who is a Republican, wants to give advice to the Democratic Party, and he can F off. But I'll tell you why and give you more details when we return.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of On the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFDR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Quick shout out to a sponsor, Plant Your Change. If you want to hook up your current credit cards or debit cards so that they round up to the nearest dollar and plant a tree for every time you round up, even if it's just rounding up 2 cents, then go to tyt.com/trees and get your information from there. I did a really cool contest with Aspiration over the weekend where 4 people had won it to talk to me after the election, and we did a private Zoom call. And one of them said, well, I signed up for Aspiration just to plant trees. And that's great. The Aspiration does the same thing. This is connected. So aspiration.com/TYT to put your money in a place where you have peace of mind and also plant trees. All right, so let me go to your guys' comments. OJam with an awesome comment in the member section. Victory, victory, victory. Is that an abundance of rain I hear? LOL, for real though. It's okay to take a victory lap, breathe a deep sigh of relief, and then we get back to work. There's no shame in taking a moment to smile though. 100% right. I love it. One last thing writes in, you would not believe the evidence Trump has. His people in Hawaii have it. I love it. Now, Trigger Incarnate has a warning though. He quotes me, we're free, we've got a vaccine, Donald Trump is gone. Cenk is the guy in the horror movie who thinks that he's gotten away from the maniac just to run right into a chainsaw. I hope not. And Trump is still out there with his mask on, or without his mask on in this particular case. But it really is done. Now, look at this. Wow, thank you guys. First of all, Anime Figure Junkie writes in on Super Chat. You've converted this libertarian Mississippian to a true progressive and have been my sanity the past 9 months. Wouldn't be here without you all. That's awesome. Aww. Okay, and so by the way, when you give at tyt.com/go, that's what we do. We convert folks, we talk to them in a way that they can understand, and our logic is clear and our facts are indisputable. So let me see the thermometer real quick. We're trying to get to 57,000 during the break. Did we get there? Here we go. No, we did not get there at all. Okay, well, let's try again. tyt.com/go. All right, last one. Full Plan writes in, earmarked for TYT's rest and relaxation fund, because he sent in a very generous super chat. Because you have carried me through 4 of the worst years of my life. I love you with all my heart. Thank you. Well, we love you too, and that's why we love doing this show with the members, with folks on tyt.com/go and super chat and all those places. And trust me that none of the money goes to rest and relaxation fund. It goes to keep going fund. But thank you from the bottom of our hearts. All right, Anna.
All right, well, now that Joe Biden has secured a win in the general election, so-called moderate Democrats are attacking the left by arguing that leftist messaging and ideology is the reason why moderates lost their re-election bid. It's not the moderates' fault. It's allegedly the leftists' fault. It's allegedly Black Lives Matter's fault. And Jim Clyburn, Representative Jim Clyburn, tried to make that argument during a recent interview. Let's take a quick look.
I can tell you about the 1st Congressional District of South Carolina. I really believe that that's what cost Joe Cunningham his seat. And I can also tell you about the Senate here in South Carolina. Jimmy Harrison started to plateau when defund the police, showed up with a caption on TV right across his head. That stuff hurt Jimmy. And that's why I spoke out against it a long time ago.
Right.
I've always said that these headlines can kill a political effort. We are all about making headway. And I just hope that going forward, we will think about each one of these congressional districts and let people represent their districts.
Now, progressives didn't lose any seats. In fact, there were progressives who decided to challenge incumbent Democrats, people like Jamal Bowman, for instance. You also had Cori Bush. They won their elections. And so AOC tried to make that point during an interview with Jake Tapper over the weekend. Let's take a look.
I believe that we need to really come together and not allow Republican narratives to tear us apart. You know, as you mentioned, we have a slimmer Democratic majority. It's going to be more important than ever for us to work together and not fight each other. And so when we kind of come out swinging, not 48 hours after Tuesday, when we don't even have solid data yet, pointing fingers and telling each other what to do, it deepens the division in the party, and it's irresponsible. It's irresponsible to pour gasoline on these already very delicate tensions in the party. So we can help. It's not saying that every member has to campaign as a progressive in a traditional progressive way, but it's to say that we have assets to offer the party, that the party is not yet, fully leaned into or exploited. And I believe that we can take some of these seats. I think Katie Porter's an amazing example. Michael Levin. There are swing seats. Every single swing seat member that co-sponsored Medicare for All won their reelection. Right. And so the conversation's a little bit deeper than that, than just saying, anything progressive is toxic and a losing message.
And so this is a continuation of the argument that we saw, Abigail Spanberger make during a Democratic caucus call. She was angry about defund the police. She was angry about what she referred to as socialist policies, and she said that it nearly cost her election. But AOC has some thoughts on that as well. Before I get to them, Cenk, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, so AOC also did an interview in the New York Times, and I love that because she pointed out things that I think were, again, indisputable, et cetera. But honestly, I'd go further than AOC. And there's one thing that I didn't love about that interview is that it sounded too defensive. So you're gonna be shocked to find out, I think we should
I disagree.
Yeah.
Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, I think we should go on the offense. So when I say we, in this case, I mean progressives. We're constantly defending. Did we cost? They charge you guys cost us the election, which is what they do every time after they lose. And then AOC does a good job of defending, but there's no one out there going, no, wait, I got news for you. You cost us the election. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, you told us that you had this great battle plan. You picked Amy McGrath in Kentucky. She got annihilated after having more money than God. You picked all these candidates who got clowned. So there's one person definitely responsible for the loss in the Senate. His name is Chuck Schumer. So the losses in the House were less, but perhaps even more surprising. And the person responsible for that is Nancy Pelosi. Second person responsible is the person that's the head of the DCCC, Sherry Bustos. She's already stepped down because she barely won her own election. So why are we having a conversation about progressives? We should be having a conversation about, should we replace leadership? The answer, by the way, is definitely yes.
Yeah, okay, I agree with you on that. But I can't blame AOC. I think she did do a good job in defending progressives and their ideology. But honestly, it was kind of incredible how quickly moderate Democrats immediately started attacking progressives. Immediately, like they didn't even take a moment to celebrate the fact that what they were fear-mongering about this entire time, right, Donald Trump, they didn't even take a second, a breather to celebrate the fact that Biden had defeated him. They immediately started playing offense. And what do we repeat on this show over and over again? The fact that Democrats, when it comes to Republicans, never play offense, never, never, never. But when it comes to progressives in their own party, again, they don't even take a breather. They immediately start throwing punches, and they're absolutely wrong. If they've learned all the wrong lessons from these congressional losses, they've learned all the wrong lessons when it came to this general election. they are being lured in and seduced by like the John Kasichs of the world. If you want to be a Republican, then register as a Republican, leave the party. But if you're not going to fight for the values that the Democratic Party allegedly believes in, then what's the point of being a Democrat? One other thing I want to bring up for Jim Clyburn and all the other Democrats who are like, pushing back against this incredible movement to do something about policing in this country. Okay, fine. So corporate Democrats who have taken money from corporate donors have decided to latch onto social issues or social unrest in the country for their messaging in order to get reelected, right? They have decided, okay, this is a good way for us to seem like we're still the good guys without having to talk about economic inequality and the economic issues that really do hurt Americans on a regular basis. Fine. So if they actually go along with what Clyburn is mentioning and other moderate Democrats are suggesting, what are you going to campaign on? Like, what are you going to campaign on then? If you're not going to talk about the economy, if you're not really going to talk about healthcare, you're going to reject Medicare for all, and you're going to reject what Black Lives Matter is protesting about, what are you going to campaign on? Who's going to be the boogeyman in the next election? They don't have a winning message, and their commentary right now, their takeaway is so stupid and short-sighted. And AOC did break it down really well. So let me do that real quick. Let me mention what she had answered in her New York Times interview, because I think she did give incredibly strong answers. I'm going to skip ahead to where she cites, data to prove that she's right about progressive ideology and how popular it is. She says, I've been unseating Democrats for 2 years. I have been defeating Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee run campaigns for 2 years. That's how I got to Congress. That's how we elected Ayanna Pressley. That's how Jamal Bowman won. That's how Cori Bush won. And so we know about extreme vulnerabilities in how Democrats run campaigns. And then she talks about the lack of digital outreach and canvassing when it comes to these Democratic campaigns. She says, I've looked through a lot of these campaigns that lost. And the fact of the matter is, if you're not spending $200,000 on Facebook with fundraising, persuasion, volunteer recruitment, get out the vote the week before the election, you're not firing on all cylinders. And not a single one of these campaigns that lost were firing on all cylinders. I mean, it's very Hillary Clinton-esque, right? Don't take any responsibility for your failures. Find some other scapegoat, whether it be Russia, whether it be the progressives, just don't take any personal responsibility. She also said this, if I lost my election and I went out and said, this is moderates' fault. This is because you didn't let us have a floor vote on Medicare for all. And they opened the hood on my campaign and they found that I only spent $5,000 on TV ads the week before the election, they would laugh. And that's what they look like right now, trying to blame the movement for Black lives for their loss. And then she says, I just don't see how anyone could be making ideological claims when they didn't run a full-fledged campaign.
Okay, I thought her interview in the New York Times was super strong. I'm going to tweak two things because I got to be honest with you guys, but I'm going to then read you another great quote from AOC. One is she said, I've been defeating Democrats for these last 2 years. And then one of the folks she mentioned is Cori Bush. She didn't endorse Cori Bush. So there are good folks who worked on those campaigns and defeated Democrats. And AOC was a huge help in most of them. I'm just being honest with you guys. She also talked about how they're telling us to not do a floor vote on Medicare for all. That's the first time I've heard you say that. Progressives outside of power have been asking for a floor vote. I haven't seen progressives inside Congress asking for a floor vote or fighting for one. So I'm keeping it real. But the rest of it was fantastic, including this quote, which is my favorite. If you are the DCCC and you're hemorrhaging incumbent candidates to progressive insurgents, you would think that you may want to use some of those firms. But instead, we ban them. So the DCCC banned every single firm that is the best in the country at digital organizing. That's 100% right. Mm-hmm. And so that's the blacklist. They're like, oh, you guys who are really, really good at beating incumbents in a way that we said was impossible. The best that we have in the Democratic Party, none of you are allowed to work for us. well, then you wonder why you lost. Okay, so the idea of taking help from progressives is an anathema to them. Taking help from Republicans, oh, they love it. They would do that in a second. But that's why they dislike progressives more than they dislike Republicans. Anyone arguing otherwise is being ridiculous and Pollyannish and not really attached to the facts. But I want to back up AOC's other claims even more. So Kara Eastman, for example, did lose in Nebraska's second. It was a 4-point loss. It was a tough loss for progressives. She was not an incumbent. Max Rose, on the other hand, in an easier district in New York, was an incumbent and had massive advantage of being an incumbent. And he ran as a conservative Democrat. Yay, Donald Trump's policies, except I call myself a Democrat. So did he lose by less than Kara Eastman? No, he lost by 16. And I can give you a dozen more examples just like that. In every race where you compare a progressive to a conservative or moderate Democrat, the progressive Democrat did significantly better in similar districts. And Katie Porter is a progressive Democrat, and in a very tough swing district, she won by 7 points. It's almost as if the voters like strength and want you to fight for them instead of fighting for the other guy, because if you fight for the other guy, guess what? The other guy wins by 16 points.
We got to take a break. So let's do that when we come back. The John Kasich story that
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
I promised you.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. In the member section, Dave of Triffids writes in, Clyburn's wrong. 1, moderate Democrats lost seats. 2, progressives gained seats. 3, every incumbent that accepted AOC's help won. 4, every incumbent that rejected AOC's help lost. 5, every swing state incumbent that supports Medicare for all won. So those are facts you will not see in mainstream media. They're totally aiding and abetting the corporate Democrats' attack on progressives, as always. And on Super Chat, BBB059 wrote in, it's not much, but I want to show you my support for this show. I love your honesty and bluntness. You've made the past 4 years bearable. No, never worry about how much or little it is. Everybody has different circumstances, and we appreciate every dollar. You guys do this show with us. So quick check on the thermometer before we keep going. This is at tyt.com/go. We're trying to get the 50. Hey, we got the 57,000. All right, love you guys. Keep it going if you can. tyt.com/go. Anna, what's next?
I believe that President Biden, in his wonderful acceptance speech last.
And the Democrats had better be very careful. This business about defunding the police, or these wild economic schemes that smack of the Republicans called them on it, on socialism.
Well, that is former Republican Governor John Kasich, who ran in the Republican primary in 2016 and failed miserably. But now he's in the business of giving Democrats advice on what they should be doing, which is absolutely pathetic. Remember that John Kasich was chosen to speak at the Democratic National Convention, which was shameful to say the least. But let's hear more of his gross Republican rhetoric and terrible advice to Democrats.
I want to be clear. Now is the time for Democrats, and I believe Joe Biden will do this, to begin to listen to what the other half of the country has had to say. I think that the other half of the country in many respects has felt as though they have not been listened to. They feel stuck economically. And it's going to be up to the Democrats to listen. We have to listen to what those folks, those Republicans all across this country has had to say. And frankly, those Republicans have to understand what Democrats want to do, because if they want to improve health care, that doesn't mean they want Medicare for all. There is no socialism in Joe Biden.
What? So he's referring to half the country, meaning Republicans, who feel that they haven't been listened to. Let me just remind you that more than 90% of Republican voters supported Donald Trump and thought he was doing a great job. So they just had 4 years of being heard by an incompetent buffoon. And I got word for you, if they thought that Donald Trump was doing a fantastic job, I don't think that we need to listen to what they want to do for the economy. The economy has been a complete and utter disaster for the vast majority of Americans under Donald Trump, but apparently they don't have a problem with that. They think he's done a fantastic job. AOC has responded to him, so have other members of the squad, Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, and of course they're pushing back against this. But let me just say very clearly that John Kasich is not someone who represents the best interests of Democrats. He's not someone who basically responds to the best interests of the American people, which is why his own party's voters rejected him in 2016. And so there's one more video of John Kasich that I want to go to, and then I'll give you AOC's response. Let's watch.
The best thing that's happened to Joe Biden is the fact that the United States Senate is either going to be Republican or very close, and it will allow Joe Biden to do what he does best. It allows him to govern as a moderate. It allows him to do the things that I've always hoped he can do, and the far left can push him as hard as they want. And frankly, the Democrats have to make it clear to the far left that they almost cost him this election. That people in this country are basically center, center right, center left. They're not far left, and they're also not far right. Do I think it's possible that you can get something done on climate? Yes. Is it going to be, some new Green Deal? Of course not. But there's reasonable things that can be done. So I think actually he's in a better position today because being pulled from the left isn't going to work. They will not get those things done. And that Congresswoman from Virginia warned the Democrats, you want to talk about defunding the police? You'll have no support. And I think this is an opportunity for Biden to talk about, the center right and the center left of this country and what can be achieved.
He's referring to Representative Abigail Spanberger, who had a meltdown because she came close to losing her reelection bid. And she decided to blame it on defund the police and so-called socialists. But AOC responded by saying John Kasich, who did not deliver Ohio to Democrats, is saying folks like Ilhan Omar, who did deliver Minnesota, are the problem. Please don't take these people seriously and go back to celebrating and building power. Anyone saying this after immigrant organizations delivered Arizona, black grassroots flipped Georgia, Michigan going blue with reality bending 94% Detroit margin, plus Rashida Tlaib running up margins in her district, and Trump publicly challenging Ilhan Omar in Minnesota and losing, isn't a serious person. So she's listing all the various ways in which progressives helped, deliver victories in this past election. And why are we listening to John Kasich? Why is he relevant right now?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go a little further, but first, I will disagree with you on one thing. You said he was a miserable failure in the Republican primaries in 2016. To be fair to Kasich, he was in the top three. At the end, it was Trump, Cruz, and Kasich. But that's relevant.
He lost, right?
No, he did. But that's relevant because he's a corporate Republican, and he represented the corporate Republican wing of that party. He didn't win. They chose the more populist path, even though it was fake populism. And Joe Biden represents the corporate Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. And that's why they're actually united. They just, Kasich, who almost won the Republican nomination, is very, very similar to Joe Biden, who did win the Democratic nomination. And Biden is unfortunately, honestly, closer in his way of thinking to John Kasich than he is to AOC. I don't even think it's close. And so after progressives fought all we could to get Trump out of office, honestly, we're repaid by the corporate Democrats instantly attacking us right after the elections are over, and then cable news bringing on people like John Kasich to rub it in as if Kasich is obviously right. Now, the question that wasn't asked is, hey, John Kasich, you said you would deliver Republican voters to Joe Biden, but 93% of Republicans voted for Donald Trump. So, and that's actually better than the polling indicator for Trump. The polling indicated he was going to get less Republicans. So through your help, Joe Biden went backwards with the Republican voters. So did Wolf Blitzer ever ask them, why did you fail so hard in this election? Why did none of the so-called wave of Republican voters go over to Joe Biden? What was wrong with your ideology that it didn't work at all? Meanwhile, as AOC pointed out, what won Biden this election? The cities. 94% in Detroit, otherwise we don't win Michigan. What won it at the end? Atlanta and Philly. Overwhelmingly not just Democratic, but overwhelmingly progressive. So we deliver the victory, and what do we get in return right afterwards? A slap across the face and getting lectured by a loser like John Kasich, who totally and utterly failed in bringing any Republicans to the table in this election. And yet, I always go back to the number one problem here is the media. Because anybody can say anything they want, but the media immediately frames it as John Kasich is right, Spanberger is right. Well, let's bring on AOC to defend her position when she's obviously guilty, right? Go ahead, try to defend it, right? Where's the equal number of progressives? And I'll go further and say progressives, for God's sake, go on the offense. Somebody should be talking about firing Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. They failed in their jobs to pick up seats in the Senate and House. How much failure can we take? All right, we gotta go, guys. But for all the members, you can hit the join button below on YouTube or tyt.com/join anywhere else. We're gonna make fun of Tucker Carlson. We're gonna make fun of demon-possessed preachers and important news on the vaccine when we return for members. Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.